Hello and welcome to the Living Fullness podcast. I'm Stina.
And I'm Father Burns.
And on this episode, we're going to be covering part 3 of the book study, Uniformity with God's Will.
If you're new here to the Living Fullness podcast, we discuss living the spiritual life, growing in the virtues, and the various cultural shifts and trends that we see, and you're very welcome in joining us.
So we are up to the final part of this book study, Uniformity with God's Will by St. Alphonsus de Liguori.
Final part, here we go.
Final part, 3 chapters.
Do it.
Chapter 5, Special Practices of Uniformity. Chapter 6, Spiritual Desolation. And then Chapter 7, I think, is the conclusion.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the whole,
it's the whole thing.
Little treatise that packs a punch
Little treatise that packs a punch. I like it.
with every paragraph.
That's its new name.
Yeah.
Little treatise that packs a punch.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure that we could do an alliteration with like T's somewhere, but I don't know. Let us know if you can. If you can figure that out, you let us know.
Little treatise that tacks a tunch.
Not quite.
Doesn't work? Right,
Not
okay.
quite. We can figure that out.
Right.
So let's do chapter 5, 6 and conclusion.
Let's.
In chapter 5, he gets really specific and really practical. He starts kind of like listing different ways that we can practically practice and put into play what this uniformity with God's will could actually look like. Mm-hmm. So he starts talking about like in relation to external matters, he says, in terms of like the weather, other like, calamities that might happen in the world. It might be economic situations, political changes that might take place, and to practice using language that doesn't actually go against God's will.
Yeah.
So in the moments where we go, there's been a massive storm, it's blown down this tree, now I've got to deal with this, tree that's been knocked over, woe is me, what a, disaster that is. Instead of kind of using that kind of language, which has this messaging behind it that says, this isn't what I wanted.
Yep.
Instead of that, it's actually about going, well, it's unexpected. It's not what I expected to come home to or wake up to. But if it's happened, God's allowed it to happen. It's part of his will. Okay, let's work with it.
Yeah.
So I love that in this part, he talks about the Jesuit. There's a Jesuit story, a story of a Jesuit. That's a better way to put it.
Okay.
A story of a Jesuit who travelled and arrived to some place that he was meant to be meeting up with. I'm not sure where he was, can't remember. But he arrived through a snowstorm and he knocks on the door and nobody answers the door. Now, they were expecting him to arrive and they're all kind of wondering, I wonder where he got up to. He hasn't arrived yet. Maybe he's decided to leave later. Nobody realised he had arrived through the night.
Yep.
He had tried to get in and couldn't, and he sleeps out in the snowstorm. And when they open the door in the morning, they find him and they feel awful because they've expected him and they've not heard him. And they start talking to him and they're like, how did you go through a snowstorm out there? How are you not mad at us? How are you not disappointed at us? How are you not angry? Like they're all kind of like, And I love what he says. He says that he was consoled by imagining Jesus dropping snowflakes on him.
It's kind of beautiful, isn't it?
I read that and just imagined like a child Jesus, like a 6-year-old Jesus, just kind of sitting there going, woo, here's another one and another one. And he's just like, he's delighting in that.
Yeah.
Like what a disposition to have in the midst of a snowstorm.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that takes quite a bit because in my mind, if I imagine that, I'm like, them snowflakes are coming at a speed, Jesus. Could you slow them down a bit, please?
To change your will. I just want to change the way you do things, guys.
Right. So I mean, it is kind of impressive, and I think that's we do look at calamities and external things that happen to us with a sense of, how could this happen? How could we let this happen? Why did this happen? And one of the oft-made remarks is why God, right? Why God did this happen? And it's not that that's necessarily a bad question to ask. It's not that there's no room for asking that question. The Psalms are chock-a-block full of why God, right? So it's not that that's a bad question. But I think there's sometimes we can say why God with an accusatory tone. You know, why would you let this happen? You know, and I think that's where it becomes counterproductive.
Yeah.
Rather than entering into a dialogue where it's like, Lord, I want to accept this. I want to accept it. I want to be unified with you. I want what you want. But in doing that, I feel like I have to ask this question, Lord, why?
Yeah.
You know, and why has its place. But it when it comes with an accusatory tone, I think it's contrary to.
Well, from what you're saying, I'm hearing you say, why has its place when we try to seek understanding from God, right? When we're seeking to understand what God's will is, why is a very, very good question to ask.
Exactly.
When we seek to want to change God's will,
that's right.
Why is not a great question.
Why is not exactly right.
Because
exactly
then the
right.
question, you know, someone, is it, I don't know, one of the saints, you know, why not you?
Right. I forget who said it. It sounds
why
like
not me, I think is the quote.
I forget who said it now. It sounds like
it could be any one of them.
It sounds like any number of the saints, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. But that's a much better question to ask in that case. If we want to change God's will, if we notice that that's what's actually sitting behind, like our heart's intentions, our heart's posture, is to go, well, why not? Why not me?
That's right. Exactly.
Let's work with that.
That's a very fine point. Yeah.
And then so from external matters, he then goes on to personal matters, which in a nutshell, pretty much, you know, what he's saying there is just, you know, God, do as you will with my personal life. It's just, just to kind of surrender to that. Yep. But he also talks about like natural defects that might happen. And this kind of brings back to what we've talked about before, that remembering that God only does things for our good. He never actually wants anything bad for us, even when he allows for hardship to come into our lives. And I love what he says, because I'll just read the quote. Yes. He says, quote, "Who receives a gift first by laying down rules with the giver of how he will receive the gift?" End quote. Just receive openly. Like, I love that he says, why, if everything that God does, he does for the good and the betterment of us, that everything we receive from God is a gift. And if everything we receive from God is a gift, what kind of a receiver are we?
Right.
If we say, God, I will accept, but under these conditions.
Under these conditions, right.
It must be something that is pleasing to me. It must be something that makes me feel comfortable. It must not be something that I will struggle with. Like, are we really gracious?
We're kind of like the 7-year-old at a birthday party that's criticising the presents he's received, right?
Yeah. Like, I don't think that's what God wants for us. I don't think that's how he wants for us to receive.
Yeah.
Granted, I do that. Like, how many times have I sat there and gone, I don't want this. Can you change it, and then I'll be happy?
Yes, I am familiar with the problem.
Yeah. And it's certainly been one that I've recognised more in more recent times when I've had some minor health issues that have come up.
Yep.
And I think I've said it on the podcast before, when this first arrived, I was like, what is this? It's come out of nowhere and I don't like it. It's really inconvenient.
Right.
But then I very quickly realised, actually, there's a particular prayer that's being answered by this very thing that I've been asked to kind of go through.
Yep.
And so now I kind of look at this and go, well, actually, if God's allowing for this to happen, it is for my betterment. There is a gift in this. It might be uncomfortable.
Yep.
That's okay. That bodily discomfort is okay. But I can accept that this is his will for me right now.
Yeah.
Possibly forever. That's
right.
okay.
Yep.
Actually, let me rephrase that, because it's not just okay. It's actually not just okay. It's a gift.
It's right. It's a gift and it's good.
Yeah.
Last year and the year before, I was in the middle of, as you know, I was the administrator of the cathedral, and I was also finishing off a thesis. And there did come a point where I was very much going, well, this is unfair. This whole thing is unfair and I don't like it. Why has this been asked of me? And I can remember saying to a friend of mine in America, why? Why am I doing this? Why was this asked? It is completely and totally unfair. I really gave it, like, I was very, very cross. And to my crossness, my friend responded with that quote from the Saints of, why not you? Like, why not you? It's like, that's not the answer I'm looking for. The answer I'm looking for is, oh, poor father, pat on the head, like that was the answer I was looking for. Yeah. But the answer I got was one of, well, hang on a second. Why not? Isn't this something that you can offer? Isn't this something that's that could be seen as a gift from God? Look, I wasn't looking for that at that particular juncture, but absolutely, yes. Yeah. Yes,
Not what I wanted to hear, but needed
Not what I wanted to hear at the time, but definitely needed to hear that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next piece he talks about is corporal infirmities, so like bodily infirmities. And he specifically talks about sickness in this as well. And I love that he points out that we can fall into the trap of thinking that if I become sick, that is a hindrance to me being able to do God's will. That this sickness is this other thing that gets in the way. And again, it was another one of those things that I read that I was like, what is he talking about? Like, how is it not? How is sickness not getting in the way? Because sickness stops me from going to work. It stops me from serving people. It stops me from, It took a while before the pieces went ting ting and I was able to go, but this too is God's will for me right now. And so if I'm fighting it, am I doing God's will? Like, is it, if my body is saying you need to rest and God designed this body to listen and react and respond as required. So if my body is saying I need to rest and I'm like, no, this mission that God has me on requires that I push through this sickness to do God's will, then whose will am I doing? Because my body's certainly not aligned with what I'm trying to do. My body's aligned with God's will here.
Right.
Which is rest. You are unwell. Rest. That's right. But that too is God's will. I think that's the piece that I was missing. Was that even in amidst the sickness, it is not a thing. It's not this, external force that we have that's outside of God's control. It is also, I almost want to say kind of like, submissive to, if you will. But it's only allowed to happen because God allowed for it to happen.
God allows for it to occur,
So even sickness.
It has its place. And the best advice that I ever got in that regard was from a priest friend of mine who, I said to him, no, I've got to keep going on. I have to keep on. And he said, you realise you're not that important, right?
It's Christophanic. You're not that big of a deal.
I beg your pardon. I fully admit there was a bit of pride that was sitting underneath all that, right? And he's like, you realise you're not that big of a deal, right? Like you need to rest, and the parish will be waiting for you once you finish resting. Like, it's not going anywhere. Just rest so that you can come back to it ready to work. That's what you have to do right now. And it's sort of like, that's this is God's will right now, and I need to hop on board with that. Like it's rather than seeing it as an inhibition, to see it as actually this will be sanctifying.
But it's not even taking rest so that you can return to doing the work of the mission. It's taking the rest because the rest is the part that's going to give the most glory to God. Right now. Like this is if this was the only moment you had left, this is the moment to sanctify.
It will sanctify the moment, right?
Yeah.
It's for sanctification that you take it. Yeah.
It's not for the productivity of what comes.
No.
After.
No, and I think that's a very good point. It's not for the sake of productivity. It's not for the sake of productivity. It's that in and of itself, to do that is simply for God's glory, which will have a good effect on the mission that He's called you to. It will have a positive effect.
Yeah. It'll have a flow on.
But it ought to be done for the glory of God and for the sanctification of the present moment. Yeah.
And it's only going to have a flow-on effect if we're used to listening and being obedient to God's will in the present.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no point in going, well, I won't obey Him today when I'm unwell.
I'll obey Him tomorrow.
It's going to be, going to, bear even more fruit tomorrow when I return to the mission that I'm at.
That's right.
No, actually, that's not how it works.
Exactly.
And that's why I love this quote, this particular prayer that he suggests as well. He says, quote, Lord, I wish neither to be well nor to remain sick. I want only what thou wilt. That is a powerful prayer.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Neither to be well nor to remain sick. Because that's the other piece, is that even when I'm sick, I don't want to be sick though. Like, it's really hard when my body is so unwell. I'm like, I really don't want to be this unwell. This is really uncomfortable. This is really painful. And there's no point in ignoring that. There's no point in pretending that discomfort isn't there. But I love that he then goes on to use that as part of the prayer to say, well, I don't actually want to remain this sick. No. But also, I don't want to be well again if that's actually not your will. Right now. If that's not what you want for me right now, that's not what I want either. So I just want what you want.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. A priest friend of mine a couple of years ago was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer.
Yep.
And his entire response to that was, well, what's the will of God? If the will of God is that I live, it's that I live. If the will of God is that I die, then I die. And I'll do what I can in between. I will take the treatment option because that's the most, that's the option that's available to me. Mm-hmm. I will take that option. If I live, I live. If I die, I die, and it's in the hands of God. Okay. Yeah.
This is what we believe. This is what
right. Exactly. Yeah.
He also points out a quote from John of Avila. He says, if you are seeking to carry out God's will, what difference should it make whether you are sick or well? There's some weight to that.
There is some weight to that.
There's some real truth to that.
Yeah.
What doesn't matter what kind of mental state, emotional state, physical state we're in if we're just wanting to do God's will.
That's it. Yep.
And there's stories of saints as well that he shares of people who have asked for miracles to happen in their life, like healing miracles. I want these particular miracles. I want to be able to see, or I want to be able to, walk again, or I want this condition gone for me, and so on. And God's granted them, but then they've gone, I don't think I asked what God wants. Let me just go back and say, actually, God, I'm really grateful for what you've done in my life, and thank you for answering my prayer. It's just occurred to me, is this what you want for me? Because I want whatever you want for me. And then, bam, the condition's returned.
Right.
And it's like, oh.
Right.
Oh.
There's a great, this is interesting. I've quoted The Chosen twice now in this book study. Feel very uncomfortable. I think it's season 2 of The Chosen has little James.
That's
and little James he's got a significant limp, and he struggles to get around. He's not as fast. He's not as agile as the others, and so he gets to a point where he just asks Jesus point blank, why haven't you healed me? Like, you've healed everybody, you've healed all these other people, you have not healed me. And Jesus' answer is, it's not that I can't. It's that I won't. And I won't because you will show people what it is to suffer. You'll show people what it is to do my will and to be lame. You will show people that there's by accepting your condition and in fact allowing God's glory to shine through your condition, that there's great sanctification to be found. So it's there's I think there's a great deal of truth to what's presented there, which is that yes, sometimes God does not will that we be healed from a particular infirmity, and not because He wills the pain, not because He wants us to experience the hardship, but because He knows that there is goodness to be found, that there is goodness that will come from this particular thing, and it's an invitation for the soul to be unified to God, and to essentially cooperate at the most radical level with His will to the glory of God and the salvation of mankind. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love that depiction as well, because when you watch that scene, and obviously The Chosen, takes a lot of
creative liberties.
That's the right word. But I love the way that they've portrayed it, because even in that dialogue that little James has with Jesus, he doesn't outright come out and in an angrily tone say, "How come you haven't healed me?" But he also in that dialogue doesn't say to him, "Well, heal me, like just do it, because you're healing everybody else and you're giving me the ability to be able to go and heal." Like,
right, and
just heal me.
There's the other aspect to it, right? Is that he's been given that ability to heal others, and I think Jesus makes that point towards the end. I mean, it's not found in the gospel; it's a creative liberty, but it makes that someone with your condition healing others. That's amazing.
That's a witness.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So there's I just love the disposition of heart that they've tried to portray.
Yes.
With little James in that scene, because he's not actually demanding Jesus.
No.
He
precisely.
actually it almost is that seeking to understand.
Yes.
It's like I'm in pain, I'm suffering, and he probably also has. I wish that this wasn't the case. I wish this was different, right? But he isn't outright demanding it of Jesus, and he is also going, but I just want to do what you want to do, and I want to understand what that is. I don't understand what's happening right now. So love that depiction. Go on YouTube the scene if you haven't. Worth just watching the scene alone. But I also love that in this particular space of kind of being offered something by God, and I kind of think back to also the moment between the angel Gabriel and Mary as well, when the angel appears to her and says, "You're going to conceive a son." She kind of has this moment where there's a delay. There's like this moment of, what is this?
Yes.
What do you mean? Like, she actually asks something of the angel, like, how can this be? And I'm sure you can speak to what that was about. My understanding is also that, although she's kind of primed and she's open and she's ready to do God's will, whatever that is, there may have also been this sense of, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you clarify what you're saying here? Or may have even been a sense of testing. Is this angel actually of God, or is this something else going on here? Either way, that little bit of delay, that's a space really where God could have come through and said to the angel, "I want you to go and tell Mary that she is going to have a son, and she already has conceived of a son." But he actually waits for a consent.
Yes.
He doesn't just force something upon Mary. He actually wants for her to want it too.
Yes.
Like there's an invitation that she then does go on to go when she, whatever happens for her. I won't speak to what happens for her, but she does go on to say, "Yeah, I will do this. Like this, yes, I accept this. This is," she gives her fiat. Like, "Yes, I will do what your will is, Lord." And so I think that example in itself is a beautiful, just a beautiful example for us to recognize every one of the things that are put in our way, uncomfortable or not, that we get to experience are all invitations from God. Every one of these moments, whether we like the weather or we don't, whether we end up with a flat tire or we don't, whether we end up with an illness or we don't, every one of them is God's like, "I invite you to something and I wait."
Yep.
I wait for you to accept. I wait for your fiat. I wait for your yes.
Yeah. And it's in those moments where we really see some of the other points that have been made in previous episodes about sort of the need to have that kingly approach, for instance, of our emotions desires, being subject to reason and reason subject to God, is that some of those moments will produce really profoundly strong emotions. You know, I mean, you're in a rush, it's a simple thing, but you're in a rush to get somewhere and you get a flat tire. Yep. Like,
very inconvenient.
Extraordinarily inconvenient. And if you're already stressed about something and then that happens, everything becomes compounded. And so it actually does, I think it takes that practice to go, okay, Lord, this is an invitation. Help me to see this for the invitation that it is. Perhaps I don't buy it right now, Lord. Perhaps I don't buy this as an invitation. Perhaps my brain's just going inconvenience. Stress. But Lord, help me to, help me to understand this. Help me to see it more as an invitation than it is a stress. Yeah,
definitely. I also love what he says about sickness being a test of spirituality. He goes on to say, it discloses whether our virtue is real or sham. If a soul is not agitated, does not break out in lamentations, is not feverishly restless in seeking a cure, but instead is submissive to the doctors and to superiors, is serene and tranquil, completely resigned to God's will, it's a sign that the soul is well grounded in virtue. I read that and was like, well, just slap me across the face. Why don't you? I'm not used to this.
Yes.
This is like, okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's like boom. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
So that's what a life of virtue looks like.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Uniformity with God's will. Hello. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
We've got some growing to do.
Yep.
We've got some real growing to do.
Yeah.
And I think that the part not to fall into is recognizing that submissive and tranquil doesn't mean suppression of the effect of suffering. Right. So it does actually mean if I'm unwell, it's not spiritually mature of me to not care for my sickness in whatever way it looks like. So in the case of, the examples that you've given of various diagnoses and so on, it is not spiritual maturity to say, I will not seek out a doctor. I will not take up the treatment that's been offered. That's not maturity.
No, that's right.
That's right. That's completely reckless.
Yes. Yeah.
Unwise, imprudent.
Right. And not virtuous.
Not virtuous, If it's imprudent, that's exactly right.
We've only got a couple of minutes left. Could we shift gears a little bit and go to just look at the last bit of what it talks about? Talks about
spiritual desolation.
Desolation, thank you. Yeah. Right, okay, I'm talking about desolation.
You brought it up.
So I was just
like chapter 6.
Yeah, so let's talk about desolation. Can you talk about it? But no, that's okay. That's okay. I can do that. So consolation is sort of we receive consolations from the Lord, and without oversimplifying a consolation, it makes us feel sensibly good. Right, we feel the closeness of God. We can actually almost describe the closeness of God. It feels like He's right next to me, or it feels I can feel Him in me, or I can, there is that sense of being consoled by the presence of God's Holy Spirit. Desolation, on the other hand, is something allowed by God, something which comes ultimately from the evil one, but something which is allowed by God in order. I wouldn't say so much as to. Sometimes it's presented to us as God withdrawing Himself. I'm not necessarily a big fan of that image, right? Of God withdrawing Himself, because God is ever ready to help us out, and I think
I think that comes from, because even as I think about the treaties, I think it uses the language of withdraws His hand.
Yes, yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like the image, right? I think rather than withdrawing His presence. He allows us to experience this difficulty and this turmoil, right? He allows us to experience this period in which we don't feel that presence, which we feel a darkness. And in allowing us to feel that, what He allows us to do is to base our relationship on something more firm than a good feeling, on something that's not based on a circumstance of how I feel, but is based upon faith in its proper context. which is to say, fides, trust. It's based on the reality of having experienced the glory and the goodness of God before and knowing that he hasn't left us. He hasn't abandoned us. He is close to us and he does love us. And so it opens up the possibility of a deeper relationship with the Lord, not one founded just on good feelings, but one founded on real trust with him. So I think that when we experience then desolation, it opens the possibility for us to go, Lord, this does not feel good. And if that's your will, then I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Because there's two things that come to mind as I'm hearing you talk. And the first is when you said that ultimately desolation actually comes from the evil one. And I think sometimes we can hear that and go, so then what, did I do something? Am I responsible for that? And two, well, where's God gone? How can this be? But then that's where, what you just said is so vital for us to remember that even then, if it's been allowed to happen, it's only because God's allowed it to happen. It's not out of God's control. It's not out of his purview. He has he is all over it. There's no need to kind of fret in that space. But the second part of what you're talking about there in terms of the feelings, I've started associating that with being like the gifts that we receive from God. So consolations are gifts that we receive from God. And I think that's a very common thing that people understand. For me, I've had to kind of put it down to, but they're not just like gifts like every other gift, like a new day is a gift. The fact that I have air in my lungs every day is a gift. The fact that I have a job to go to is a gift. But rather putting these consolations down as like they're the little sweet things. So you know, thinking about it in terms of the context of a relationship between spouses, like if I think of it in that context, it's like a good husband who brings home flowers and chocolates and, has lots of cuddles and hugs and buys a present, does all the little things that are extra. They're the extra bits that actually make us feel, particularly joyful, particularly delighted in that extra little bit. And so a good husband, though, he knows his spouse very, very well. And so like a good husband, he knows that he can't do this every single day.
No.
And because if he was to do that, his imperfect spouse is going to start to rely on those gifts instead of the security of the love that actually exists in that relationship. So he knows he has to withdraw that for my good because otherwise I become reliant on those gifts and begin to associate those gifts with his love instead of what his love actually means. So the fact that he even withdraws, if you will, from that, but even then it's not him withdrawing love.
No.
It's him simply shifting the way of affection
that's
towards me.
That's right.
So that I might feel what the relationship is actually like without the extra gifts. Because that's when I actually experience the depth of his love. Because what I experience in that space is just his silence.
Right.
Just his presence, just his silence.
Right. And I love what you say about defining a consolation as a sweet gift. Because the experience of desolation, God allowing us to experience that, it's the perfect example of God taking Satan's own weapons and turning them on their head and taking what Satan intends to be an attack, turning it into a gift by which we might draw closer to the Lord and trust him deeper. It's incredible. God is good.
All the time. Yeah. So there you go.
Right.
Actually, one last thing.
Yes.
Is there's a tip that he gives that I have loved. It has been super helpful. And it's that when desolation becomes really dry, it can be really hard to stay the course. When it becomes so dry, you haven't felt his presence in a while, even though he is there. Yeah. You can't hear him, even though he is speaking. It becomes very hard to stay the course in that time. And so his tip is just be with him anyway.
Just do it. G.K. Chesterton has this quote that one of my friends often requotes, which is If something's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly.
Yeah.
Which, when we hear it, we're like, whoa, that doesn't sound right. But the point isn't, just do things poorly. The point is, look, on the days where things just aren't working, just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Just be there. It's if nothing else, you are there with him.
Yeah.
God can work wonders with that.
Yeah. We don't need the feelings associated with it.
That's right.
Yeah. I've felt this myself when I was grieving. There was a period of time where I felt like multiple times during the day I was just pouring. Like, this is all the feels that I've got, God. Like, this is all that's going on. But it hit a point where I was like, I don't have any words left.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I've said everything I can say to you. You know how I feel about it. I can't bring this person back. Like, I miss this person, and, how much of an influence they were in my life and how much my life has changed. And there is nothing left for me to say.
Yep.
And in that point, it was so tempting to go, well, then I just won't. Because there's nothing left for me to say. He already knows what, I want to say. So then I just won't. And in that moment, this tip was like, no, just stay the course anyway. Okay.
Yep.
So we just sit in silence.
Just do it. Yeah, just sit in silence.
Just sit in silence.
Yep. God can work wonders in silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have to hear him. He doesn't have to talk to me. I don't have to say anything more to him.
That's right.
We can just be.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So there you go. Uniformity with God's Will, a little treatise by Alphonsus that packs a punch with every paragraph.
Yeah.
If you have enjoyed this book study, please make sure that you go and follow our social media handles, Virtue Ministry and Living Fullness on Instagram and Facebook. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we regularly put out episodes, audio episodes every week, but also video episodes of all of our guests and some special ones that go up there as well. And if you have the financial means, please join our Patreon and support us to continue being able to do this podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Before we leave, a Truth, Beauty and Goodness, Padre.
Yes, so My Truth, Beauty and Goodness is it's a wonderful resource. It's called Faith of the Fathers. It's a 3-volume set. This 3-volume set has everything you could ever want from the fathers of the church. Everything about any topic that you could ever think of. Mortal sin and venial sin. The Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin. The inspiration of the sacred scriptures. The creation of the world by God. Various points of morality and dogma and spirituality. This guy has just come along. This guy, I should probably know his name. Sorry. But this fellow has come along and... Have I got it there? No. Blast. This fellow has come along and just compiled all of these sayings and from various works of the fathers that actually speak about these things. And you're like, wow, yeah, the faith is incredible and it's historical. And it goes back to the fathers and the apostles.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Get it. It costs a little bit.
I was just going to say that sounds expensive, though.
It's worth it.
Or just get to know a priest who has one. Maybe he'll let you look at a page or two from time to time. I don't know.
I won't let you borrow it.
That's why I said look at a page.
But you can have a look inside my office. Right? You get it in the office, and then you can turn pages
with gloves.
With gloves. Yes, with gloves. Yes.
Awesome.
Very good.
For me, it has been gardening. I've been getting back into the garden as the seasons are shifting.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Kind of looking at what do I need to pull out, what is done for the season, what do I need to add, what are the growth learning areas
That's quite nice. It's quite nice.
And there's just so much reflection and meditation that happens when you're growing something, particularly when you're growing them from like seeds.
Yes.
And just how difficult it is to grow something from seeds when you live in a place that has extreme climate.
Quite a challenge.
Weather changes.
Yeah.
And then just being able to learn, what the environment needs to be like in terms of the insect life, what the plants are happy with and like, and what they don't like.
Yes.
How do you manage that?
Yes.
So there's a lot in there, and every time I'm kind of in there trying to figure something out, I go, oh man, God, like I don't know how you do this. I'm glad it's you. Like this is hard work. I don't know how you put Adam and Eve to a whole garden. Like I can barely manage my little patch.
This little area here, yeah.
It's hard work, but it's good. It's really, there's lessons that you learn in cultivating new life like that, or bringing something into life or keeping it alive that you just don't learn through reading and writing. It's a very different kind of learning.
Yep, sure.
So there you go.
Love it. Very good.
Thanks for joining us for this 3-part book study.
Yes.
We will catch you again next week, but until then, love and press.
God bless.